Next up, we're going to cover a handful of attributes that we can add on to particular inputs. And the first one is called name. The name attribute is very, very important when you're building a real form that is going to send data somewhere. Ours are kind of half-baked forms that don't do anything. They just visually show us a form. But the name attribute is very important nonetheless. It's a way to provide a name to the data in every field. So when my form is submitted, imagine that I had, 3 different text fields. Here's my form. If I go back, there they are. It's not about labeling them. We're going to learn how to label fields in a moment, but it's about giving them a name when the data is submitted and sent somewhere. So if I give each one of them a name, maybe I'll just do one for now, and let's call this username. This is totally up to me. You don't want to put a space in there, but otherwise do whatever you want. It should be appropriate to whatever this input field corresponds to. So let's say this is a username field. I'll refresh. We won't see a single thing different. It doesn't show up here. Now if I fill it out with a username cat chicken guy with a dog and I click submit, we're going to see something a little different in the URL. If I zoom in here, you can see that it says after google.com, username equals cat chicken guy with a dog. That right there is from our name. Username is set to cat chicken guy with a dog. If I change that field name, so instead of name of username, it's now name of, how about color? And I go back to my form, whatever I put in here, ASD, 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 it now is sent in the request. This is just a way for us to see what was part of the request. And it says color was set to ASD, ASD, ASD. Google is not set up to do anything with that. It doesn't care about it. However, if we really care, if we want to do a little fun demo, Google is set up, if we look at their own search form, where's the form itself? Right there. It's set up to submit to /search. So if I search this or submit a search for chicken, here's the Google URL. I'm going to delete pretty much everything in here. But you can see right there, it says Q is set equal to chicken. So Google is set up to expect a property to be sent to it called Q. And we could take advantage of that. If I call this input Q and go back, I still submit to Google, but I call it Q. And I put something in here like cats and I click submit. It doesn't quite work because I have to use the correct URL that Google's form submits to. So if we look at the form here, it submits to /search. So I just need to change my URL to be google.com/search. And then I'm providing a piece of data called Q that will be sent based upon this form field. And basically I'm just conforming to what Google is expecting. This has nothing to do with our forms. We're basically making our own form that will then send data to Google search and should hopefully respond to us as if we came directly from Google's own webpage. Let's search for my favorite movie, Amadeus, submit, and take a look at that. It took us to google.com/search, Q equals Amadeus. So what we did was we just made sure that the name matched. Now, if I gave this a different name like term or search term or something, let's call it term, Google's not anticipating that, right? So if I put something in here and I submit, it doesn't know what to do with that. So it just sends me back to the Google homepage. Anyway, that's kind of beyond what we need to care about. It's just a fun demo. What matters is that this name field is very important. So I could have multiple pieces of data in this form. Let's go back to calling it Q. And then I'm just going to comment this out using the shortcut and make another form. And this one won't submit to any location. It's just going to refresh our page. But inside of it, I'll put an input that's text. And this one will have a name of first name. And then I'll have a second one that has a name of last name. And then I'll have a button to submit. So every input we make in a form in the real world should have a name because we need some way to identify the data that is contained in this field. I'll refresh my form here. All right, so I have first name. Let's put my name in there. Last name, I'll put my name in there. And when I submit this, take a look at my URL right there. First name equals Colt, last name equals Steele. So each piece of data was sent under a different name. And that is the name attribute. It's kind of a long explanation, but it's a pretty important one, even if it has no bearing on styling. The next attribute we'll look at is a simple one. It's called Placeholder. And this goes on an input, not on the form, but on each input. And I can specify placeholder text. Now, what is placeholder text? Here's an example of placeholder text in the real world. It says search GitHub, but as soon as I start typing, it goes away. So it's a placeholder. It's not real text in the input. It's just sort of fake placeholder text that goes away, and it tells you a little bit about what should go in there. So on this first field that is called first name, I would probably put something in like first name. And we can put spaces in here because this is just going to be displayed to a user. And if I go back to my form and refresh, you can see it says first name there. It's grayed out. When I click, it's still there, but as soon as I type, it goes away. And that's honestly all that there is to placeholder. It's just a visual aid. So placeholder for this one could be last name. And there we are. Two form fields. They both have placeholder text that instantly disappears as soon as the user puts data in there. And then we saw the name attribute, which is more complicated to explain, but it's basically just giving each piece of data in each input a name that it will be sent under when our form submits. And for now, I'm just setting action to be blank, which has the effect of refreshing our page and just sending our data to the same location we're already on. It still submits the form. You can see it refreshed, but it doesn't send our data to some server or do anything with it. So that's a little bit more about input attributes name and placeholder.